Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. You're with GB News. I'm Sam Francis. The headlines at 11. First, we start with some breaking news. The US Supreme Court has said that it will decide if Donald Trump can run for president. The 12 justices have agreed to review Colorado's ruling that the former president is ineligible for office. The case will be heard next month, and the ruling will apply across the whole of the US. Lawsuits in a number of other states are seeking to bar Mr. Trump from the 2024 ballot, arguing that he engaged in insurrection during the US Capitol riots exactly 3 years ago today. Trump's lawyers, though, argue that the 14th Amendment to disqualify a candidate doesn't apply to the president. Here in the UK, the Post Office is under criminal investigation over the wrongful prosecution of hundreds of its staff. Metropolitan Police detectives say that they are looking at potential fraud offences committed during the Horizon scandal. More than 700 people were bankrupted or jailed when flawed software led to false accusations that they'd stolen money. It comes as the government's being urged to pay compensation to those that were affected, and Labour is calling it one of the worst miscarriages of justice to ever happen in Britain. Meanwhile, the independent group that refers cases to the Court of Appeal is urging more potential victims to come forward. In other news, Labour says that the government is asleep at the wheel over its handling of flooding, as hundreds of warnings remain in place across the country. In Nottinghamshire, a senior councillor has said that some residents have been affected by floodwaters 3 times in just 3 months. More than 1,000 properties across England remain flooded after the heavy downpours this week. But Floods Minister Robbie Moore says that the government has provided enough money for flood prevention.
Of course, always more to do, but I know how hard local authorities are working with the Environment Agency. We have experienced a huge amount of rain which has fallen, as you will see, right across the country, not only here in Nottinghamshire, but down in the Severn Valley and Severn Trent areas, but also down in Gloucestershire. We are, as a government, in contact with the Environment Agency, working closely with local authorities, making sure that we are providing as much support to residents, to businesses that have been impacted, and that's exactly why we are out and about.
Rishi Sunak is facing another by-election after MP Chris Skidmore has announced that he will resign as soon as possible. The former Energy Minister plans to step down when Parliament returns next week. It's because of new legislation for oil and gas drilling, which he says is wrong and will cause future harm. The government says the planned expansion, though, of new fossil fuels in the North Sea is vital to achieve energy security plans. In the US, new court documents released today have revealed that claims that Prince Andrew had daily massages when he visited Jeffrey Epstein in Florida. In a transcript from evidence in 2009, Epstein's former housekeeper said the Duke of York was one of the celebrities who spent weeks at the Palm Beach home. It's the third round of documents to be unsealed, detailing those who had connections to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Earlier this week, the first batch of files named the prince, along with 150 others. He strongly denies any wrongdoing. And items that were owned by Marilyn Monroe and Hugh Hefner are up for grabs in a one-off auction, as a special collection of items goes under the hammer. Those dreaming of their very own Playboy mansion could get their hands on Hefner's famous smoking jacket and silk pyjamas. There's also a black evening gown that was worn by Monroe during the making of the classic film The 7-Year Itch. And a custom shade of Elizabeth Arden lipstick in a gold case is also available. That was created especially for the Hollywood star. That's the latest from the GB Newsroom. For more, we're on TV, radio and on our website, gbnews.com. This is GB News.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, and joining me tonight, the Joey Barton of political commentary, Nick Dixon, and the Joey Deacon of political commentary, Leo Kurtz. You probably don't even remember those references, do you?
No, I'm 25.
Yeah, you'll have to look those up in the break. Yeah,
I got Joey Barton though. He's a popular figure.
He was a popular figure in the early 2000s, but he's roared back into the news lately with his outspoken views on female football commentary.
Yes, total edge.
It's not even available for us to talk about.
And who is Joey Deacon?
Joey Deacon was a popular figure on Blue Peter.
And that's it.
Yeah,
the best jokes have to be explained at length afterwards, I find.
He was a representative of the differently abled community who became a byword in playgrounds for people who missed open goals.
Ah, that's very diplomatically put.
So it's full football commentary. Anyway, let's take a look at the front pages. We kick off with the Daily Mail and pressure on MET to quiz Andrew. I guess that's Met, although it's been capitalised in my headline. So that suggested there was some sort of acronym, but in fact it's just the Rozzers. Telegraph, top green Tory quits over net zero now. And there she is. She is certainly very green. No, I think that's a coincidence. The Times, Post Office faces police inquiry over IT scandal, and that looks like the new Premier of Argentina governing the front pages there. I'm not sure. Guardian, Sunak asleep at the wheel. That would be a further catastrophe following his unbuckled backseat driving. As floods devastate England, the Eye have rats infesting UK towns and cities as bin chaos leads to rubbish piles. It's all getting very dystopian. And the Daily Star, rest gently now, Derek, my love. That's Derek Draper, who has passed away, as indeed has David Soul. I know who I care more about. Those were your front pages. More references to the 80s there. So, starting with the Daily Mail, Leo.
So the Daily Mail have pressure on Met to quiz Prince Andrew. So these new court papers, the Epstein files that were released, claim that Prince Andrew has knowledge of Epstein's sex trafficking, which obviously he probably does. I mean, I don't want to prejudice any case, but yeah, I'd be amazed if he didn't. He was there every Tuesday. It seems like The
implication was certainly there in previous conversations and accusations, wasn't it?
Yeah. Now the police, they've been pressured to look into it. Not just as Prince Andrew as the suspect, but also what he knows about what other people were doing. Obviously, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, so many people on the left were there. So Prince Andrew is apparently going to dress up as a Palestinian protester to get the police to leave him alone, and that allows him to go about London and do whatever he wants.
The new form of royal prerogative.
He can defecate on a war memorial. Nobody's going to touch him. him. But yeah, he's not having a great time. And he paid like 12 million pounds or something to settle out of court to make this case go away. So I mean, I sort of feel for him. You spend that sort of money, you think it's it's going to be like at least who's the kid that Michael Jackson.
Was that Joey Deacon?
Something like Jordan. Something.
That's right.
Man, he never opened his mouth again. It was.
But with this thing with the Epstein files, I mean, there's a sort of sense that they're teasing it out, aren't they? They're playing it out yard by yard. But for me, the vastly more important question is what kind of construct was Epstein? Not which particular. I mean, a lot of scientists and physicists and people with access to nuclear codes, definitely some very high-ranking high-profile American politicians. I don't honestly feel that Prince Andrew was the most significant figure because it's not really for the royal family.
But I think maybe
to call the shots.
Maybe for Britain, he is.
Oh, I totally understand for selling newspapers, but it doesn't really feel to me like that's the. What do you think, Nick?
Well, no, Clinton seemed more significant. The allegations. And what was Hawking up to? I alluded to that last night, so I won't go there again. But I mean, do you know what? There's been a few pieces on Andrew's Day. One in the Telegraph that almost got me sympathising with Prince Andrew, which is quite hard to do. But when you look at it, and so we don't know the extent of his misdemeanours, right? So there's that. And then the fact that he's not a working member of the royal family, can't use the title, etc. You sort of say, what else can he really do? But the thing is, even if he appears in public with them in any capacity, everyone immediately says, get rid of him, what's he doing? And so there is really there's nowhere left for him to go. I mean, he might apparently get a role on the Balmoral estate as gardener. I don't know, what could he possibly do?
Driving around on some sort of quad bike or something.
Yeah.
Look at gameskeeper.
It's strange to say you're sympathetic with Andrew, but the thing is, he shouldn't be allowed to live in luxury, right? Because for now he still is at the Royal Lodge on a long lease, and now he has to suddenly raise the money himself. So I'm not sure where that's going to come from. But it's not that he should live in luxury, but what else can really happen to him? He's already been basically destroyed.
He could start some sort of hustlers' academy like Andrew Tate.
Not a bad idea.
I think Andrew needs to lean into this and own it and become some sort of sleazy playboy
Maybe he
figure.
could set up with Philip Schofield, because I remember him saying at one point, "What more do you want to do to me? I'm at breaking point."
Yeah.
Now, that feels a very familiar kind of scenario.
Well, there was one suggestion. What he should do is like a long atonement, like the guy from the Profumo scandal, who just got down, did charity work for a long time, was eventually kind of forgiven.
Visitor, wasn't he?
So get your head down, do charity work. But the problem is, he's been described as displaying a fatal mix of arrogance and stupidity by people who know him. So the suggestion is he lacks the requisite self-awareness to do that.
That certainly was in evidence on the Mateless interview, wasn't it? That was what the whole thing came with. Let's move on, Nick, to the Times.
Yeah, Times have Post Office faces police inquiry over IT scandal. Obviously, this massive scandal we've all probably heard about by now. And it was appalling. 700 people prosecuted. At least 4 took their own lives, I believe, which is absolutely shocking. Because one of them was hounded for £100,000 that he hadn't stolen. And it is so baffling. Why didn't they look and say, oh, there's a sudden rise in theft by postmasters? How likely is that? Why did they all double down and not just assume it was a glitch, an IT glitch, which it clearly was? It's too little too late. It's good that it's being investigated. It's too late for some people. And the other thing I'd just say is, why isn't Sunak making more of it? Why doesn't he come out and say, right, we're paying them all back? This was a scandal that started under Labour. Ed Davey of the Lib Dems was Postal Affairs Minister. He dropped the ball, and I'm putting it right. Isn't that a political opportunity?
Yeah, I would say it was.
Yeah, and also libertarians should be making hay with this, because this is a classic example of the government being incompetent and unable to run anything.
Yeah.
You don't see these kinds of scandals with the private sector where they're doing it with their own money.
Or even subsidiarity, is that the word, where things are just handled at as local a level as possible?
Yeah.
The whole thing, I mean, the suicides are emblematic of that these were people who took an enormous amount of pride in the role they played in their community.
And we've seen not very many people coming out to sort of claim compensation, coming forward. They originally earmarked £700 million for compensation, but apparently only £220 million has been claimed, because people don't want to relive the shame.
No.
They don't want to, stick their head up again.
What a horrible story. On the front cover of The Guardian, Leo.
So The Guardian they've got a special vegan issue. Can't wait to rush out and buy that. But their main story is Sunak asleep at the wheel as floods devastate England. So apparently the flooding is Rishi Sunak's fault. You know how religious fundamentalists like to blame flooding on Western degeneracy or
he is a Hindu.
Gay bars or whatever.
He may have access to the weather. I don't know how their system works.
This is The Guardian are doing the exact same thing, but for the right. They're saying, it's raining because of Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak made it rain. It's like, are you mad? Are you mad? So the Environment Agency is blaming it on the climate crisis, which is even more crazy. I mean, flooding isn't a new thing. There was flooding in the Bible. Noah's Ark. Remember that? Was that the climate crisis? Was that because we were burning too much oil?
Well, arguably it was. But even if it were the climate crisis, that isn't Rishi Sunak's fault. He's been in charge for a little over a year now.
Yeah.
I mean, the climate crisis has been going on since the 80s.
Yeah,
At least, you know, you can point at anyone's finger. They do always try and kind of build this sort of stuff up into Hurricane Katrina or something, don't they? As if there needs to be a national emergency crisis helpline, you know, Chinook helicopters and so on. The front page photograph that they've chosen to illustrate it with is of a man giving somebody else a piggyback down a slightly wet street.
I think that's a woman. Hard to know these days.
We
don't know the
But you know what I mean? It's not, you know, we're not looking at tens of thousands of people, you know, sheltering under polystyrene, polythene.
Yeah, they say 1,000 properties were flooded across the country.
I mean, if you're involved, obviously it's a hideous nightmare. But on, you know.
The only way Sunak has made it rain is by halving inflation, thus putting more money back in your pocket.
The Eye, Nick?
That's all I've got on that. So the Eye has rats infesting UK towns and cities as bin chaos leads to rubbish piles. I think that's piles of rubbish, not rubbish piles that are badly made piles, though probably a bit of both. Collections in some areas have been delayed by up to 3 weeks, which just feels kind of normal for London, but services have been hampered by bank holiday storms and flooding, and houses in Nottingham have faced bin roulette, which is a very non-fun game. Although I don't know how you can tell in Nottingham if there's bins everywhere.
I like the idea that they literally spin them before selecting one. I
mean,
I've been in a couple of... Well, funnily enough, Brighton had a bin crisis about 3 or 4 years ago, and it really is horrible, because we have those massive bins, like one every 10
And Brighton already smells at the best of times.
You know, it is badly treated, because it has a lot of itinerants and people who just come down for the weekend.
So
and
there's itinerants.
So Edinburgh was the other one. Edinburgh, about the festival before last, their bin staff decided to go on strike during the festival. I mean, it was absolutely sickening.
Don't you think the bins are basically in London, at any point in any part of London, the bins are always overflowing? Have you ever seen the bin? Have you ever gone down to your bin store in your building or on the street and just gone, oh, they've collected everything perfectly?
Well, I used to live in a flat and we had our own bin, and I don't know how a family would live with that bin, because you get like it's like a Tupperware box. It's not, you know, you can't.
You need to buy like your own skip or like several storage units or something.
Some enormous compactor that you can densify your... Anyway, that's our front pages, folks. Coming up, we have why buying a house is easy peasy, the single least important aspect of the Epstein files again, and what some people will do to avoid going to Utah. We will see you after the break.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. I'm still here with Nick Dixon and Leo Kirst. We go into the papers now. Leo, our first story in the Times concerns our favourite bank, eager not to be forgotten by the channel.
So buying a house is not that difficult, says the NatWest boss. And he's right, you just need 500 million billion pounds. All in gold coins. But this is comments from Sir Howard Davies. They've drawn ire from would-be buyers, campaigners and politicians. What planet does he live on, says Ben Twomey, who's the chief executive of Generation Rent, which sounds like a terrible 80s band. And Nigel Farage of GB News also weighed in, telling Davies that he had no idea about NatWest customers or the real world. Obviously, there's some pre-existing beef between Nigel Farage and NatWest. But yeah, I think, you know, there's people are super rich. Like this guy, Sir Howard Davies, he gets £750,000 a year.
That's his salary.
Salary from NatWest.
Probably
Obviously,
a few kickbacks on top of that.
He'll have other. So he'll be the sitting on boards of other companies or whatever.
He's probably a director of Generation Rent.
yeah. Or they're probably their synthesizer player. But yeah, I think people don't realise that most of us don't make £750,000 a year. He can actually afford to buy a house every year, or he could if he didn't have to pay so much tax.
Well, the thing, I mean, I know you've been through this recently, Nick. The thing with house prices is they're not just the house price is very rarely the key measure. It's interest rates obviously are high right now. What level of deposit are banks looking for in order to give you a mortgage to get started? If you did just look at house prices, they're actually historically below the average at the moment.
Really?
The real house price average. Well, according to the long-term trend. I mean, not in absolute terms, but in terms of what one expects.
Compared to the 70s.
But it's compared to income, isn't it?
They go up in a predictable way, and the line goes up and down like that, and it's now considerably below the average across the country.
Does that take into account income at the time? Because it's my understanding, I don't have the figures in front of me, that in the past, a mortgage or a house was X percentage of your income, and now it's 7 times
That's the long-term growth. So in terms of the long-term growth of house prices, that has continued to go up, but it's below that long-term.
You just have to look at the reality.
But obviously, mortgage rates have gone up, and also it's difficult for people to get a deposit.
Yeah, if you live somewhere near where I am, it'll be like 350k. You'd be lucky to get a 1-bedroom, right? And that's still in an area where you'll get your phone robbed on the high street, and people will openly do nitrous oxide or whatever it is in the street. You know,
it's called London.
Yeah, it's still London, right? And so how are you going to get that if you've got a sort of normal wage and then you times by 4.5 or even times 5 to get your mortgage? But you've still got to get your deposit.
He says you've got to save up, just like the old days.
Yeah, but of course you're not going to save the deposit.
Nobody can save up.
And in the old days, you had interest rates of like 10% and things, like in my grandpa's era, right? So you could actually save.
Well, the
interest rates have been so low until recently. Where are you going to save?
The real issue was that in the old days there wasn't cool stuff to buy. All the stuff was rubbish.
Yeah,
all you knew was like a turnip and stuff. Nobody wanted to go out for dinner because the food was horrible. There weren't any games.
Yeah.
You could live in a turnip if you hollowed it out and...
people say leave London. Just, by the way, people say leave London, but we work in London, so what are you going to do?
Oh, yeah.
Leave London and
we have no choice. But, most jobs could do. Levelling up. Nick, The Guardian now. Once again, the state urgently need to step in to rectify the problems caused by the state stepping in.
Yeah, good point. Rapid help needed for COVID babies who fell behind, says former Ofsted chief. COVID babies, slightly odd image, isn't it? You sort of feel like they've made in a lab or something.
They supported Generation Rent.
Yeah, it's COVID, the baby era. But yeah, it's terrible. As I've often said, you can't turn society off and on like an old PC. It doesn't work. We tried to do this with lockdown, and this is one of the, I believe this is one of the reasons this is happening. More than 80,000 children born in 2020, or are they too young for lockdown even? No, they're born in 2020 or 2021, so it was that time. And they didn't reach one or more of the key measures of progress for their age group last year, including 60,000 very young children who did not develop communication abilities at all, so usually seen in children their age.
This is weird, isn't it? They're not lockdown babies in the sense that they were children
but
of the
their
lockdown.
parents got used to that, perhaps. Anyway, there's people going to the stores, kids still wearing nappies, unable to use a knife and fork, 18 years old. Sorry, had to do it. Shocking, yeah. So this has come from Sir David Bell, who's an education policy maker, and he's so clearly something needs to be done, but what?
They seem to be talking about children, very young children, and they're talking about increasing the amount of facilities. They're talking about eye-watering childcare costs, which is true if two parents do need to return to work.
That's the other problem.
But they're talking about 2-year-olds. They're not talking about kids who are failing at school. They're talking about kids who a lot of us would assume were only spending a couple of days in care anyway, or, maybe not at all. Or,
they're talking about these kids wearing nappies. I've got a 15-month-old baby who wears nappies. It's just what babies do.
Nappies wear...
So is this actually a parenting thing? I just said this is a lockdown thing and it's actually a parenting thing, or what?
It seems to be. And also, the thing is, the state keeps coming in and, looking after people and coddling them. And as soon as the state starts wiping your bum, you lose the ability to wipe your own bum. So this is where we're heading. Eventually, we're all going to be taxed at 98% to pay for state bum wipers to go around to these feckless parents' houses.
Or is it that they're working? I don't want to be like a big sort of toy here. Is it that they're working and they can't afford childcare? And
I suspect he is trying to build funds and accrue some sort of momentum for a campaign he has, which he simply wants, there to be much more childcare.
We need to let Darwinism and let nature take care of this. When the government, I'm sick of the government stepping in. Like you said, it's a problem caused by the government stepping in. The government needs to step out.
Quite right. The Guardian now, Nick, and MP Chris Skidmore has indeed performed an outrageous handbrake turn on his loyalty to the government.
Indeed. So Chris Skidmore resigned Conservative whip over Sunak's oil and gas licence plan, and he's posted out, used to be able to say tweeted out, a long and self-important letter about it. And you know that he's in the wrong because it's been praised by Peston, Caroline Lucas and Ed Miliband. So I know whose side I'm on already, don't even have to read it.
That is a holy trinity.
Yeah. and also it's been pointed out by Carl McCartney that he was part of Cameron's A-list, although he seems to be a straight white man, so I'm not sure, because that was like a diversity list, wasn't it? But he was another dodgy Cameron hire. And he's just a guy who's saying
Maybe he misunderstood the nature of the Skidmore.
Possibly. He's saying that, he felt he had to. His conscience led him to have to leave because of this net zero stuff. I actually think this is one of the areas Sunak has got right, net zero, where realistically, you can't just suddenly say we're scrapping it, even if some of us would like that. And he's kind of toned it down, which I think is quite smart, because people are worried about how they're going to pay their bills, but then some people are worried about the environment. So you go, OK, I'm going to tone it down a little. But this kind of has been enough for Skidmore to leave in the fit of peak.
I mean, I think that the net zero thing has been as poorly thought through as any government policy or commitment in my lifetime. But I'm amazed it got as far as it did, really, and I probably should have been paying more attention talking about it.
Well, I think, maybe over the last couple of decades we've sort of trusted the government to run things too much.
That won't happen again.
But this guy, Chris Skidmore, he's in the Conservative Party. They're supposed to be conservative. They're supposed to be against radical change and communism, which is what, Green policy essentially is. So why didn't he go and stand for the Green Party? The reason is he wanted to be in power and he wanted to be an MP. But, if that's what you really believe, go and stand for the Green Party.
I suspect he will be, because he's resigned as an MP now. He's forcing a by-election. I think he probably will come back in as a Green.
Right.
There are quite a few of them, aren't there, in the Tory party in this administration? You go, you're not a Tory. You're not remotely a Tory. I can't remember that woman's name.
I'd say the entire government.
The one who wanted to get GB News' licence banned. What was her name?
I thought you meant Anna Soubry, but you mean a different one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that one. Yes. Yes. Caroline something? No.
Yes, it is. Noakes.
No, there you go.
No, she's not
Together we remember the name.
Conservative. She's about...
Right.
Ridiculous, colourful, but barely believable story in The Independent now, Leo, of a man who faked his own death to stay in Scotland.
Yeah, so a fugitive of all the places. They normally flee to Brazil or somewhere with some sunshine. But a fugitive accused of faking his own death while facing charges of rape and domestic abuse in the United States has been extradited from Scotland to the States, according to reports. So it's this guy, he's originally born and raised as Nicholas Rossi. He's 36, and he moved to Scotland, moved to Britain. He got married as Arthur Knight. This was his new identity, who, I think that's a character from an 80s TV show.
I like that, Arthur Knight. It's got a sort of blocky...
If you're going to pick a name, go for something like Arthur Knight.
Max
probably,
Power.
yeah, you know, the clue is it's a cool name.
King Arthur and the Knights. He's just gone King Arthur and the Knights. I'll just go for the middle bit.
Yeah, and I'm sure I saw a documentary about him, and you know, part of it was him in a wheelchair being wheeled out of court, and he was saying, "I'm the victim of mistaken identity. I'm an Irish orphan named Arthur Knight," and then he tried to put on this terrible accent. It was
Indeed
amazing.
I am. And he even claimed, this was the absolute coup d'etat for me, that they discovered he had tattoos that proved he was this Rossi individual.
Yeah.
He claimed that those had been tattooed on him while he was unconscious in hospital.
Yeah, but the fingerprints also match. So did they cut his fingers?
Just
when he was asleep?
restyled like painstakingly before he woke up.
Should have given himself a really boring name. You know, Arthur Knight is just too obviously a shooter. Just give yourself a boring name. Be the grey man. You know what I mean? Call yourself like David Smith or
James
something, and
Bond.
claim you work in a post office.
Get your
That's tough
tattoos
these days.
lasered off. But he got caught after being admitted to hospital with COVID. So I don't know how that led to him being caught.
Presumably they took some records from him at that point, did they, and match him all up? But I mean, you've got to. I mean, it's no laughing matter. He's accused of a serious sexual. Is it an actual rape? Isn't it? I think or something.
Yeah, I believe so. He had a troubled upbringing. He had an adolescence in care, suffered abuse and neglect.
The crime was maybe 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah,
but still, you know, it's been a picaresque tale. But he seems to be in remarkably good spirits, though. He was sort of giving thumbs up as he was wheeled out of the court.
I'm struggling here, Sam, because you said it's no laughing matter, but you've been laughing at it for about 3 minutes.
I find it quite the creativity, that's all I ask for. That's the halfway mark. Coming up, we have the Littlest Littler versus HMRC. I gave him an extra R then, I think. Coronation strife and how dyslexics cope with the N-word. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
welcome back to Headliners for the second half. So, Nick, we will kick off with the HMRC, and they say Heil Hitler.
Nice. You've been working hard tonight, Simon. These are high-level links, is what these are. Yeah, they've gone with, congratulations, Luke. Now pay us $83,000 tax. HMRC remind darts hero Luke Littler it will get over a third of his $200,000 World Championship prize money. So this was quite annoying. This was one of those X, formerly known as Twitter, posts. They said, big congrats to Luke on his fantastic run to the final. We can confirm the existence of income tax. So this irked me, and it's irked a lot of people, and I'm going to explain why. So one is the annoying thing of, like, companies like Ben & Jerry's mouthing off about the Middle East when you're like, just give me the ice cream. So one is it's like, stay in your lane. Two is, with HMRC...
Silence brand. Right.
And then with HMRC, there's an additional two things. One, they're supposed to be serious, obviously. But three, they have power over you. So the banter isn't that funny, right? If you don't pay your tax, you go to prison, and as any anarcho-capitalist will tell you, if you then resist, eventually violence will come in, and it'll be at the point of a gun, as they say. So, with that power imbalance, it's not fun to banter. If I say, lol, I'm not paying my tax this year, I go to prison, so I can't banter you back. So there's something extra annoying. I'm not sure that's in the forefront of people's minds. When you think about it, that's one reason I think that it's so irritating. It's like, we don't want to banter with HMRC, just do your job.
And it's not funny anyway, is it? It's a simple statement of fact. Why would they do that? It just seems mean-spirited. I don't see the funny side of it at all.
I think it's just to remind everybody that they've got to pay tax because they're clamping down on all kinds of taxes and, you know, earnings that people might not think are tax. People might not think, you know, darts jackpots are tax.
So was it not banter? It was just an overt threat?
Yeah, they're threatening a 16-year-old boy with prison.
Well, that's an interesting point in itself, I suppose. Perhaps his age was significant. Would it be, if you won like 50 quid in the pub darts competition, you wouldn't have to declare that, would you?
Is it cash?
Yeah, this is very speculative. It's been some time since I've...
I think if it's under a certain point, you don't have to... I think you can earn £1,000 tax-free, you know, as a side hustle anyway, if you're really good at darts.
OK. Anyway, he's an extraordinary phenomenon, isn't he? The thing that most people seem to be interested in is that he looks like much older than he should be for 16, but I'm not sure that he does. I mean, he's obviously like held his nerve incredibly well for a 16-year-old.
Yeah. As a Scotsman, he looks like an average 16-year-old.
Yeah, I've seen plenty like that, just a bit rough. I think this is the thing, isn't it, when the middle classes start tuning into working-class sports.
Why are people called Luke so good at darts? They were both called Luke. He was beaten by a guy called Luke. Will loads of people be named Luke now after them? Probably.
They are a hell of a double act. Telegraph now, nearly as good as Starsky and Hutchworth. Telegraph now, Leo, and some pretty bizarre complaints about coronation coverage.
Yeah, so the BBC has received 900 complaints over biased King Charles documentary. So this is a programme showing the royal family behind the scenes on Coronation Day, and it was said to be overly positive about the monarchy. I mean, I don't know what you expected on Coronation Day.
God, look at this muppet.
Yeah. Like Hardline. Emily Maitlis pops up and is like, look at these scumbags.
How do you feel about all your wealth?
So other royal complaints. This has been quite a year for royal complaints. There's the actress Adjoa Ando, who said that the Buckingham Palace balcony was terribly white.
Yeah, that was after she'd been looking at Meghan's family or something, wasn't she? She sort of said as a contrast,
Yeah. Although, to be honest, I didn't know Meghan Markle was actually black until she, started making
became
a
the
fuss
reason.
about it. She just looked like a sort of, regular, mysteriously hot woman.
Magnolia, I would say.
Yeah. And they also received lots of complaints over the coverage of Prince Philip's death in 2021, with those viewers arguing it had been too ubiquitous. I don't think, some people just like complaining by the sounds of it.
It does seem that way. Nick?
Well, I don't have loads because the next two stories are so good. I just want to say I'm annoyed that this story has made me side with the BBC.
Yeah.
Because it's so stupid that people are complaining. I'm like, I'm going to have to defend the BBC. It's obviously absurd.
Maybe they should say how many is a percentage of the number of people who watched it as well. 900 complaints, but maybe it had 9 million viewers. I don't know, in which case it would be fine. Anyway, minor point. Nick, this Telegraph story is as elaborate a series of elephant traps as you are likely to have to navigate this evening.
Yes, but this is actually good news. So this is... Well, the headline is white middle-aged men are bottom of everything, says bank worker sacked over N-word. But this is Carl Borg-Neil, who's dyslexic and has been awarded £500,000 after the court ruled Lloyds unfairly dismissed and discriminated against him, which they surely did. He was we've covered it before, he was in a training session and he asked a question about the N-word purely to see what you would do in such a
There's a particular scenario, wasn't it? What would you do? He's white, but he says, what would I do if a person of a different ethnicity used the word, right?
Yeah, it was a question of intent versus effect.
Yeah.
But because he has his dyslexia and the question wasn't being understood, he said the actual word.
Yeah.
Then the person running the seminar, who said, oh, it's a safe space, went all vitriolic and started berating him, saying he'd be kicked out and claimed to take a week off work because they claimed they were distressed. Absolutely absurd. And then Lloyd just were happy for him to be called racist. He was told not to contact former employees. He suffered back pain. He suffered anxiety. He has to take sleeping pills. Because he says here clearly, the main thing, even if he had to lose his house or sell his house, was clearing his name. Because he doesn't want to be called a racist, which he's not. And we're now finally realising there is a cost to just going around calling people racist and destroying their reputations. And I have to shout out the Free Speech Union here and my associate Toby Young, who underwrote his legal costs.
Did they?
And so shout out to them, partly because Toby's still got my Christmas present and I want to pick it up. But they've done great work there, and I'm so glad that Carl has won this.
Well, they're doing better work than the Good Law Project on a case-by-case basis at the moment. I mean, I was disgusted by that because, as you say, I don't quite... The only thing that struck me as a slightly odd note was this dyslexia. I know what dyslexia is. It doesn't normally... It sounds more like he had a problem with something like stammering or something. He was really struggling to get his words out. That's what he said. But anyway, whatever it was that caused that, it's appalling that he is being treated as if he'd used this word in anger.
Yeah, it's like the post office scandal again, but on a sort of opinion cultural level. And why are they having this training in the first place? They're having this training, that's telling them they're all racist, and this is everybody should be treated differently based on the colour of their skin. The training they're receiving is racist. All the diversity, equity, and inclusion staff and training across the country in every organisation are systemically racist and bigoted against white people.
And also incredibly brittle by the sound of it. It takes a week off work to get over the distress caused by this. And she wasn't even accused of anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and saying it's a safe environment. And you can, literally specifically saying you can make mistakes. And then somebody makes a mistake and this happens.
Well, £500,000 later, hopefully Lloyds have learnt their lesson. We'll see. Leo, we gave Nick his go. Now it's your chance to get cancelled and dragged around Twitter like the corpse of Hector around the walls of Troy.
So Sean Bailey dubs Carol Vorderman the #1 bully in the country after a fresh attack. When we say attack, she hasn't gone after him with a broken bottle or anything. It's just Twitter stuff. So the Tory peer, Sean Bailey, has accused the TV star, Carol Vorderman, of using her platform to organise pile-ons. And this comes after Sean Bailey said that Carol Vorderman can't talk about politics if she posts pictures of her bum and boobs on Instagram. I disagree with them. Carol Vorderman is 79 years old. I think her bum and boobs are a testament to British engineering. I think he should have criticised her hypocrisy. Using her status as a trusted mathematician to then flog dodgy loans to confused old people. That's an absolute scumbag. That's a heinous thing to do. And then to pretend you're some sort of glorious golden cuddly-wuddly person who just wants to attack the Tories. It's like she's another Lineker. I wonder if she, wriggles out of paying tax like Lineker does.
Well, Leo is obviously quite happy with getting dragged. How do you feel about this?
Gone in there. Well, I think personally we should have a moratorium on discussing any woman's appearance on this channel because it just doesn't go well for us. You know what I mean? It's gone so bad. They're already out to get us. And I will say as well, Carol, I like Carol. She's got 5 boyfriends apparently. If she wants a 6th, DM me. Yeah. I'm open-minded and very lonely. But she's got 5 boyfriends apparently. But anyway, I don't know exactly how it works. I haven't seen the rota. But the point is, Leo, I'm more interested in her opinions now, and Sean's opinions of what he said. Firstly, Sean Bailey, not a misogynist, seems like a great guy to me. He speaks in a normal vernacular that anyone can understand, which is why he appeals to voters and things. So he's just being, make a reasonable point. But whether you can... I think you can have that Instagram and still make political comments, but it's the political comments I have the problem with because they're banal, it's mid-wittery, it's very Route 1, anti-Tory...
It's extraordinarily populist at the same time that she is actually attacking the Tories for being populist and shallow. She does seem to have grasped how social media works. I mean, on a purely cynical level, she has elevated her profile as somebody who previously had no kind of connection with that work.
And
the main way she's done it is through creating a series of feuds.
It's a bit like Stuart Lee, though, who recently praised her in an an article, and it's sort of like, oh, I'm being edgy and bashing the Tories.
I can't remember.
Yeah, but it's like, or one of them, It's like you're being edgy and bashing the Tories, but it's not edgy at all. It's just very, very route one, banal stuff.
Well, we've got a society that sort of has elevated what people say over what people actually do. So you've got somebody like Lawrence Fox who pays his taxes in full. He's probably paid for a whole hospital wing somewhere and the amount of taxes paid over his career. And then you've got people like Gary Lineker who, had to be taken to court by HMRC. And so I think Carol Vorderman, it's all air. It's all chat.
The other thing is,
to be fair, nobody knew how good at darts Lineker was.
Yeah. By the way, she attacked Julia Hartley-Brewer and I believe Sarah Vine for being the witches of Fleet Street. That is also misogynist language if you're a man calling a woman a witch.
Which is more misogynist than boobs, I think, isn't it? Anyway, Nick, an attempt to eradicate school truancy in The Guardian that doesn't involve tasers, XL bullies or birching.
Yeah, so this is government to fund school attendance mentors in worst-hit areas of England. And this one actually definitely is about COVID because pupil absences remain stubbornly higher than before the COVID pandemic. So it's an estimated 1.5 million pupils missed 10% or more of their scheduled classes in autumn and spring last year. And in response, the government has come up with this mentorship scheme where they'll work with 3,600 children for 1 year. And people are saying, in addition to the 1,600 children to be mentored already, so people are saying it's feeble, it's not enough.
It sounds feeble. We haven't got time to go into it properly.
It's not that interesting.
Mentors, it just sounds like you're tiddling there, aren't you?
Yeah, just more government spending.
Yeah.
Just stop spending money.
Yeah, there's got to be reintroduced corporal punishment, I think.
You said tiddling, right? Just checking.
Fiddling with tiddling.
Oh, that's what I was worried about.
That's the final, the third part done, rather, the final section to go. Overstretched yoga pants, a vision of Uranus, and the power of a sexy earthquake. Those are sadly 3 separate stories. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're back. I do apologise. So, Leo, Telegraph now, and after the Vorderman story, there should be a high-speed power walk in the park for you. Very nearly mispronounced walk then as well.
That could have been cool if that was like your thing. Oh, there you are, and just put the glass on.
Yes.
You made it without the panic. That
Like
would have actually
Columbo
been
or
good.
something in reverse, yeah. Just one more
good to
thing.
see you again.
So some women are too overweight to wear yoga pants. That's not me saying it. It's the Lululemon.
It's Carol Vorderman.
But you also think that separately.
But I do also think that. Although women love posting pictures of themselves in yoga pants. Normally, usually it's fantastic. But this guy, Chip Wilson, that's not a made-up name. He's not wanted in Utah for anything and moved to Scotland. He claimed that executives at Lululemon live in fear of bad press coverage and had tried to be everything to everybody instead of keeping certain customers away from the fitness brand. So he founded Lululemon in 1998 but resigned from its board in 2015 after blaming overweight female customers for a quality failing that resulted in its black leggings becoming see-through, which is hilarious. Lululemon, for people who don't know what it is, it's a sort of overpriced women's sportswear brand.
Well, they have. I mean, there's a thing that I don't want to like besmirch, but Sweaty Betty is a similar thing, isn't it? That I think is very popular in Brighton. They have a big shop, and they do. Everyone wears these activewear gear now, just all day long. But this one in particular, I did read the story. They refused one when it was under his control. They refused to go any larger than size 12 because they didn't want anyone to be seen wearing these things who they thought would bring the brand into disrepute.
Quite right.
And he is, well, whether he's right or wrong, it's certainly been a massive shift, hasn't it, in the way that brands do project themselves. Victoria's Secret does this now. Their shop windows quite often have outsized models and women who would not traditionally have been regarded as, models.
I like the way you say, I did read the story as if you've made an extra effort tonight. You actually read some of them. That's nice.
I remember a specific number.
But no, he's completely right. He says the definition of a brand is you're not everything to everybody, and that's key. It's who you don't serve as well, otherwise it's meaningless. So even though you could say it's crass, he's absolutely right.
Well, inclusivity has become, a thing that brands want to be known for now, isn't it? Whereas it used to be exclusivity. And even if you walk down Bond Street or whatever now, a lot of very high-end brands seem to want to associate themselves with people who, are not, as I say, conventionally aspirational shapes.
That's an interesting. That's a very diplomatic way of saying fat people, hideously
it's not
ugly
necessarily
people.
just about being elite, is it? You could be Aldi, saying we're serving a certain market, or you're Versace, serving something else. So
but it's actually tanking for Victoria's Secret and these brands that are putting all the ugly people in their adverts. Their sales are plummeting.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fad. Metro now, Nick. Your challenge, should you accept it, is to discover a Uranus pun that has not already been exploited by the paper itself.
Yes, scientists probe Uranus in more depth than ever and reveal its hidden glories. So, congratulations, Metro. I can't really add anything to that. The whole article is really that joke. It goes on and on. It says, we've got some news we need to share with you about Uranus. It turns out Uranus is a different colour to what we previously thought, and it's significantly affected by gas, notably methane. That is
affected by gas is another...
the whole thing is like that. And it's by Catherine Fiddler, which I'm starting to wonder if that's even a real name.
What colour is it really, then? At least we'll get that out of it.
Oh, you want the actual facts?
Pale blue, I think.
Yeah, something like that. You asked me even though you knew.
I did wonder about that because my limited understanding of colour is that it's quite context-dependent, isn't it? And I don't know how you would see it exactly if you were sort of floating on the surface of a gas planet or whatever.
The colour changes depending on how much methane is at the planet's poles.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing I was thinking.
And also the sun, it's so far away from the sun, are you going to get the full wavelength of light reaching
the full
there?
spectrum, yeah. So they're interesting questions which they've avoided
They're just chucking some puns there, almost as if the Metro isn't a real newspaper. Just a blog.
Let's move on to the Daily Mail in search of real news, Leo. The words gun, snake, lover, sex, money and earthquake. Feeling aroused?
Apparently so, because this is about certain words and why they're likely to endure. So sex and fight are two words that have stood the test of time because scientists say arousing words are most likely to endure in our language, whereas newer words such as riz, which stands short for charisma and situationship, might not survive. But these words that are likely to survive, they're the sort of things that are in James Bond movie titles. They're words that are gun,
Call
snake,
to action words.
Yeah, lover, money, and earthquakes. They're dynamic. They're doing something. And also, they talk about words being more concrete, more solid than other words. So cat is more concrete than animal, and animal is more concrete than organism.
I find this interesting, genuinely, because if you do stand-up comedy, you need some of those concrete words, and people need to form images in their head, and you give them words that give them sharp outlines. They tend to laugh much more quickly than if you give them random concepts. And there's a test you can do to find out whether a word is hard or not, which is to say it multiple times in a row and point and watch to see how long it takes to become meaningless. Have you ever done that until it just becomes a phonetic? If you say cat, 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 eventually it just starts to sound like a clicking.
What happens if you do that on live TV?
Yeah.
Does the viewer eventually turn off, or do they just keep watching?
Anyway, I do think it's interesting, but fight isn't a particularly great example, I don't think, because that would have been Ficht not very long ago.
Yeah, but I think, well, yeah, but it's still, I guess, the same name. It's just changed pronunciation, changed accent. But it's like, you know, if somebody shouts at you, hey, look, those people are having sex, those people are having a fight, you're going to turn around and watch. Whereas if, you know, look at that organism. You might not
I think I'm having one. Nick, encouraging news now for silver groomers, or whatever we're called.
Silver surfers. It's silver surfers. Yeah, it's over 70 is the UK's most online adults after 20-somethings survey shows. This is from the ONS. Silver surfers spend an average of 43 minutes and 6 seconds a day using their laptops and other devices, 10 minutes longer than those in their 40s. Still very low, though, isn't it? Yeah. Why aren't they binging on YouTube videos for 8 hours straight? You know what I mean?
I try and get my parents to do that. They sit up and watch this show, but I tell them, if you just conquered YouTube, you could watch it whenever you want to, but...
That might affect our numbers, so keep them watching if you could. But yeah, my mum's like this. She's online a lot, and I think this does make sense. I think, it's a myth that over 70s are not online. They are. They're loving it.
They're for the plucking.
Although they're not on social media, apparently. They're just doing other stuff.
No, they do love Facebook, which has become absolutely the Greys book, I think they call it now. Anyway, the show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Saturday's front pages. Daily Mail, pressure on Met to quiz Andrew. Telegraph, top Green Tory quit over net zero row at Skidmore. The Times, Post Office faces police inquiry over IT scandal. The Guardian, Sunak asleep at the wheel as floods devastate England. The Eye, rats infesting UK towns and cities as Bing chaos leads to rubbish piles being swept away by floods. And the Daily Star, rest gently now, Derek, my love. That's Derek Draper, who has passed away. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Leo Kirsten, Nick Dixon. I'll be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Stephen Allen and Bruce Devlin. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, thank you. Have a good weekend. Good night.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. After a very wet start to the year, the weekend promises much drier conditions. It's also going to be turning a little bit colder. We're losing low pressure systems and replacing them with an area of high pressure that's likely to last for most of next week, bringing a lot of dry weather. A lot of dry weather, but it's not completely dry. Still pretty wet out there this evening over parts of northeast Scotland, some heavy showers over the Northern Isles, and there will be some damp and drizzly conditions affecting central and eastern England, and showers continuing to affect West Wales and Cornwall. But for many, it will turn dry and clear and cold. Touch of frost likely, particularly from northern England across Scotland and Northern Ireland. So yes, a cold start to the weekend. Could be some stubborn fog patches in southwest Scotland, northwest England. Will be quite a grey day, I fancy, over parts of eastern England. A bit dank and drizzly, but thankfully not much in the way of heavy rainfall. And for many, certainly in the west, we'll see quite a bit of weak winter sunshine, which will struggle to lift those temperatures to about 5 to 8 Celsius, so round average for the time of year. But turning cold quickly on Saturday night, another frosty start across the north on Sunday. Still quite cloudy at times in the east, but I'm more optimistic for a bit more sunshine coming through on Sunday. So for most, a dry and a bright day with some sunny spells, but it will be cold and it will feel even colder with this brisk wind across eastern and southern England. Goodbye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World and a Happy New Year. Look, tonight on this show we have Barry Gardner. He's back on the show. We've got Paula London. She's a political broadcaster and commentator. We've also got Paula